A prophet flees a burning city. A princess carries a throne. A stone travels farther than any stone has a right to travel. And an entire nation walks the earth today with royal blood in their veins, and absolutely no idea. Welcome back. If you've been with us since the beginning of this series, you already know, nothing about this story is small. In part 1, we traced the scarlet thread from the birth of Judah's twin sons, through the prophetic breach that split a royal line. In part 2, we followed Jeremiah's commission to destroy and to build, to uproot and to plant, and we watched as the prophet carried the daughters of a king to a people who didn't even know they were waiting for them. Today, in the final chapter, we land the plane. Here is the question that drives everything in this episode. How does an entire kingdom vanish from the ancient world, and reappear on the far edge of Europe, with its throne intact, its royal bloodline unbroken, and a crown with 12 points? That question, that is where we are going today. It is very helpful if you hit the like, subscribe and share. Help build my channel, and let's take a look together into these uncovered forgotten tales. Here is something that historians have wrestled with for centuries. Ireland has no beginning. Not in the way most nations have no beginning, with murky legends and disputed dates. Ireland steps into the arena of recorded history as a fully formed monarchical kingdom, running at full speed, with no explanation for how it got there. No founding war, no conquest narrative, no slow rise from tribal conflict. Just a kingdom, already functioning, already regal. Scholars have pored over the chronicles, the records, the histories. And they all agree on something remarkable: the origin of Ireland's monarchy is, by secular standards alone, unexplainable. But the Bible is not confused at all. In Isaiah chapter 41, God speaks directly to the far-off island peoples. He says in verse 1, "Keep silence before me, O islands, and let the people renew their strength." Isaiah chapter 41 verse 1. Then he asks in verse 2, "Who raised up the righteous man from the east?" And he answers his own question in verse 4, "I the Lord, the first and the last, I am he." But it is verse 8 that stops every serious reader cold. Still addressing the island peoples, God says, "Thou art Israel, my servant Jacob, whom I have chosen, the seed of Abraham my friend. Thou whom I have taken from the ends of the earth." Isaiah chapter 41 verse 8. From the ends of the earth, from the rising of the sun, from the east. That is not poetry, that is an address. God is identifying who lives in those far-off northwest isles. And he is saying, "I know who you are, even if you do not." Researchers who have combed through every available chronicle of ancient Ireland, secular historians, biblical scholars, antiquarians, all arrive at the same three undeniable facts. Fact 1. Around 585 BC, a notable man, described variously as a patriarch, a saint, an essentially important personage, arrived in Ulster, the northernmost province of Ireland. He was accompanied by an eastern princess, a daughter of a king, and by a man named Simon Brach. They carried with them extraordinary objects: a harp, an ark, and a mysterious stone called the Lia Fail, the Stone of Destiny. Fact 2. This eastern princess was given in marriage to the Irish king Herman, but not without conditions. The notable patriarch required that Herman abandon his former religion and build a college for the prophets. Herman agreed. The school was named Ma'olam, which means School of the Prophets, in both Hebrew and Irish. And Herman renamed his capital city Tara. Fact 3. The name of this eastern princess was Tefi, and from her wedding day forward, the royal arms of Ireland became the Harp of David, a symbol that has remained on the Irish crown for over 2,500 years. 2,500 years. The same harp. But here's what they didn't know. The secular historians recording all of this, the ones who documented the princess, the harp, the stone, the prophet, they were tracking a royal migration. What they did not see, what they could not have seen without the full sweep of scripture, was that they were not merely watching a family arrive in a new land. They were watching prophecy execute itself in real time. Ezekiel had described all of this. His riddle, the cedar twig, the high mountain, the tender branch planted in new soil, was not metaphor. It was a map. The prophet Ezekiel wrote of a female passenger, a princess, arriving by sea in a second vessel. He described her destination as a land with furrows of her plantation. Now here is where it gets striking. The province of Ulster, the very province where Tefi arrived, was historically known as the Plantation of Ulster. That phrase appears in Chambers' encyclopedia under the heading, Ulster, to this very day. The furrows of her plantation, Ulster. But Ezekiel had said even more. He had described this new land as the height of Israel. He had prophesied using a specific Hebrew word for what the royal remnant would do when they arrived there, Sorak, translated as spreading vine. Strong's exhaustive concordance defines it as to extend, to spread, to stretch exceedingly, to extend even to excess. This was not a people who would simply survive. They would spread, extend, they would stretch beyond all normal boundaries. And the crown worn by the sovereigns of this kingdom, this hitherto unaccounted for monarchy on the far edge of Europe, had 12 points. 12 points, 12 tribes. Everything happening in Ireland in 585 BC was not the end of a story. It was the first move in a three-part sequence the prophet Ezekiel had declared centuries before. Ezekiel had spoken of 3 overturns, 3 transfers of throne, crown, and scepter across geography and time. Each overturn would bring David's royal line closer to its final appointed resting place. And each overturn was not political accident. Each was orchestrated. The first overturn moved the throne to that goodly land by great waters. Ireland, the royal line of Zara, the rightful Judaic branch, the one connected to the Scarlet Thread we traced all the way back in part 1, had already been among the people of the Isles for more than a century before Jeremiah arrived. When Jeremiah landed with the king's daughters, the transfer was completed. The high branch was brought low. The low tree was exalted. The dry tree flourished. These are Ezekiel's exact images, and they map precisely to what the Chronicles record happening in Ulster. And remember what God had promised David himself, not just about his dynasty, but about a specific place for his people. In 2 Samuel chapter 7 verse 10, God declared, "Moreover, I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, that they may dwell in a place of their own, and move no more, neither shall the children of wickedness afflict them any more, as before time." 2 Samuel 7:10. A place appointed, a people planted, a permanence promised. This was not describing the land of Israel, where Israel had already dwelled, and been repeatedly afflicted. This was describing somewhere new, somewhere else, a goodly land, by great waters. Here is the twist that changes everything about this story. Ireland was not the end destination. Ireland was the first overturn. Remember Joseph's 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, to whom the birthright blessing was given by Jacob. Scripture declares they would grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. But then, crucially, they would separate. Manasseh would become a single great nation. Ephraim would become many nations. A company, a multitude. The first overturn rooted the royal remnant. The spreading vine extended. The 12-pointed crown continued. And then, as the centuries turned, the vine kept spreading, exactly as prophesied. The one great nation and the company of nations would emerge from that original planting, fulfilling what had been spoken over 2 sons in Egypt before Israel was ever a kingdom at all. The scepter and the birthright, once held by separate tribes, once divided at the breach, had merged. They were now one story, moving through time toward a single promised heir. The one to whom it truly belongs. The one Scripture calls simply, he whose right it is. So we return to the question that opened this episode. How does a kingdom vanish, and reappear on the far edge of Europe, with its throne intact, its royal bloodline unbroken, and a crown with 12 points? The answer is, it didn't vanish. It was moved. Moved by a prophet who had been commissioned to both destroy and to build. Moved by a princess who carried with her the harp of David and a stone of destiny. Moved to a province whose very name echoed Ezekiel's riddle, the plantation of Ulster. Crowned with 12 points, sealed with a harp that is still, to this day, the royal arms of Ireland. And if the researchers are right, if the chain of racial and national evidence is as unbroken as they claim, then there are people alive today who carry the blood of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who are fulfilling the spreading vine prophecy right now, who live in the prophesied location, who have separated into the predicted pattern of one great nation and a company of nations. And they have no idea. Scripture says that will change. It says they will be recognized, not only by themselves, but by all the nations of the earth. The recognition, according to those who have studied this most closely, has already begun. The scarlet thread, once tied around a tiny hand at the moment of a dramatic birth, stretches from that tent in ancient Judah, across centuries, across continents, through 3 prophetic overturns, and lands somewhere today. On a throne, in a bloodline, in a people who are living out the destiny whether they know it or not. The low tree is exalted, the dry tree flourishes, and the Lord has spoken, and done it. Ezekiel chapter 17 verse 24. That is where we leave this 3-part journey. The thread was never lost. We just had to learn to see it. If you would like further context and the rest of the story, check out previous videos and future videos. If you would like more information where to research this subject, pause this image and look into these resources or find resources in description. If you have book sources or links of your own on this subject, please share in comments or email me. Thank you. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe for more great content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.